Welcome to the Straight from the Source's Mouth podcast. Frank talk about sex and dating.
Hello, my name is Tamara, and you're listening to Straight from the Source's Mouth podcast, where we have Frank talk about sex and dating in the modern world. This is episode number 11, and today we're discussing post-divorce dating with Carissa, who is back, and Tiphany Kane, who has her own podcast called Love and Life After Divorce. If you've not already done so, you can subscribe or follow this podcast by clicking the link below. And welcome to the show, Carissa and Tiphany.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for having me again as well, Tamara.
You are welcome. Happy to have you both. And so we'll start with Tiphany. I know you have your own podcast. So what led you to start it? I assume it's something happened.
Well, I started my podcast as a way of creating community and connection. I am 7 years out from a divorce. That was a tough one. And I'm in a really happy, joyful place now. And it's kind of a way of letting women know that the sadness and isolation and shame and trauma that you're experiencing right now as you're going through your divorce doesn't have to be that way forever. There is love and joy and happiness on the other side of it. And so it's really about helping women through all of their, trials and bringing them to the happy place after.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good message to have. And I've been divorced for 21 years, so I've been in a happy place for a while. But I know Carissa is more newly divorced, so I'm assuming, does something about this resonate for you, would you say?
It does. I really haven't started in the dating scene or anything of that nature until recently. So that is a good message, and I would absolutely like to hear more about it. So I'll have to get your podcast information so I can.
Yay. It's a fun one. I've had a burlesque dancer on. I've had a relationship coach. I've had an OBGYN talk about single momming with newborns and just all kinds of good stuff. A sex therapist and really fun people to talk to about, this journey after divorce.
Yeah, sounds great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I was going to say, I started in stand-up comedy, so you would think mine would be fun and funny too. And I think Carissa had the funniest one early on in our episodes about that everything but episode. But yeah, we definitely could bring more laughter to it. I just send the link to my stand-up instead. That's where the funny stuff is. So we try.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is
Freudian slip in the first episode?
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
You'll have to tell us.
Yeah.
Right now? You want me to tell you? We were talking, I think we were talking about, I think it started as sex and dating, and we were talking about, I don't know exactly.
It's kind of like our history.
Pre-marriage. Yeah, history and et cetera. And I said everything but sex, but not butt sex. So it was.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Anyway, it was kind of, and there was a pause, of course, between there, but it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
That's funny.
Yeah. So what has been your experience with dating, Tiphany, or people you've interviewed on your podcast, like after divorce? What's the biggest issue women have faced getting back out there?
Yeah, for me, I got married pretty young. I was with my ex for 19 years. So we met when I was 21, and I was over 40 when we got divorced. So it's a whole different world when you're dating in your 40s with 2 children versus, dating younger. So for me, it was really learning what it was that I wanted in a partner and really learning about who I was. I was in a pretty difficult marriage. He's very controlling and isolating on the abusive end. So I didn't get to really know who I was. So my journey after divorce was really, I can't even call it a rediscovery of who I was, because it was truly just learning who I was and who I am and what it is that I want. So I would say my dating after divorce was a lot of trial and error, learning, okay, I like that, but I do not like that. And so then just keep trying to meet people and explore and discover. And finally, I'm 7 years out from divorce, and I am with a amazing partner that ticks most of the boxes, so that's really good. I learned a lot, but I worked with a therapist. I needed to have a therapist. There was a lot of healing that needed to be done, but I also worked with the relationship coach, and that I think was the game changer for me. The relationship coach really helped me learn what boundaries are. I had no idea, coming from a very controlling marriage, what boundaries are. Your job as a wife in a controlling relationship is to make the man happy, which basically is impossible to do. And so, bend over backwards, walk on eggshells, do what you can to make the person happy, and with no regard to your personal needs. So that was a big part of my journey, was learning, what are my needs? What do I care about? What do I want? What are my boundaries? I think early dating was a lot of learning, what are my boundaries? And, sometimes that's a hard lesson to learn, but I think I'm really good and strong in my boundaries now. Still have a little bit of that nice girl in me that pleases others, but overall, I have some pretty good, strong boundaries now. What about for you?
Yeah, actually, it sounds very familiar. It wasn't necessarily in my marriage, but in later relationships, I had like 3 in a row that weren't so healthy. So getting out of that was like my first dating experience, kind of post-divorce. And I had the same thing. I was like, what do I like? And that's how I got into stand-up comedy, was because I was like, oh, I want to take a class on this. I had taken one 20 years earlier. So yeah, and boundaries, definitely hear you on that. I had no idea what those were either. And I also worked with a therapist who recommended the book. I think it was just called Boundaries, and lots of other books as well. And I know you talk about your books on your podcast too. So I definitely have lots that I recommend. But Carissa, did you want to share what Tiphany said, or answer that question?
Well, I'm not quite 100% sure on how to answer that. I mean, like I said, I just entered the dating scene. It's good to hear that other women have found good, solid men, that are good in a relationship, coming from, someone who had major mental health issues. And I think narcissistic personality disorder, and like you said, trying to, please them and walk on eggshells and do all of those things that a good wife does. Picked up the slack, did everything that I was supposed to do. Now I'm just, I have pretty good boundaries. Most men that I've actually been on dates with haven't made it to date number 2. So I don't know if that's a me issue, or if it's just, the dating pool and where I live is not awesome. So, I mean, it's just a little frustrating, but also as a single mom, it's hard. I have a son that I'm trying to turn into a man. That's hard as a mom. I mean, really, that's not our job. And it's very difficult to get good, solid male role models for them. So I guess that's my biggest struggle. And just finding decent people to actually even befriend and do things with. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say about that.
It's an interesting journey for sure. The dating over 40, right? It's very interesting. And I think part of it is we all come with our stories, and sometimes even people call it your baggage. I don't like really calling it your baggage, but I do think it's our stories, right? And we each have those. And you think, okay, what story am I telling myself? Martha Beck, in her book, The Way of Integrity, she talks about that. Like, what story are you telling yourself about this right now? Whether it's you're on a first date with somebody and there's stories going through your head of, oh my God, I could never handle the way he's eating right now for the rest of my life. Or, you know what I did? You know what I mean? And so we start telling these stories of, if I go on date number 2 with him, then that means I'm with him for the rest of my life. And I have to handle this loud chewing noise and the way he cuts his meat. And I just can't handle that. And we start escalating these stories and creating scenarios out of nothing, right? And so it becomes hard because we're dealing with our own pain and our own trauma and our own stories. So for me, the most important thing I did was be in the moment, right? Just, I'm going to be right here, right now. This date is right now. This date is not 10 dates down the road. This date is not a year down the road. This date is not walking down the wedding aisle. I'm just right here, right now, meeting this person, listening to their story and not making up any meaning about that story. And I'm going to enjoy this person as a person right now. Will I go on a second date with this person? Maybe yes, maybe no, but I'm going to enjoy right now. Once I took that attitude, I really had fun dating. I will admit there were 1 or 2 where I was like, oh, good God, get me out right now. This is not going to work. But other than that, the majority of the dates I went on, and I went on a lot, I thoroughly enjoyed dating and going out on dates. I had a lot of fun with. And the man I'm with now, who I've been with, we're getting close to 2 years, David. People hear me talk about him on my podcast quite often. I didn't realize in the beginning ticked all of my boxes, right? Like in the beginning, I wasn't sure, but he was so sure that I was like, okay, let's try this out. Like I was just present in the moment and not putting any meaning on anything. So I could kind of go along for the ride and get to know him without expectations and without telling myself any stories. And I really got to know him and just enjoyed getting to know who he was without making a ton of meaning out of it. And it's turned into something great. We live together now. He's phenomenal with my children. My kids love him so much. And he's not perfect and our relationship's not perfect, but we are really good at talking about what we need to talk about. And so we have never fought because of that, right? And I'm emotional. I'm the person that will come in the bedroom and throw my covers over my head and just leave me alone. I can't deal with the world right now. And he's just so good about letting me do that and then coming in and rubbing my back. And, do you need to talk? Is now a good time? And I'll sob and talk and let it all out. And he's like, okay, all right. What I think I hear you saying is, and then we end up having a great conversation and it's good, So, he's definitely,
and it actually brings you closer.
Definitely good. It does.
Yeah, those kind of fights, as you call them, just resolving issues makes you closer each time you can go through that. Yeah. And I learned that myself. Like I have a lot of dates and I have a lot of fun and I just enjoy the moment. And I used to be one of those people that thought through, the end. And I think a lot of women do. That's kind of one of men's complaints is that we start thinking and talking about and trying to define it like early on and, see the future. And if there's something wrong, like you said. But one of the books that I thought was really good about that was I Suck at Relationships, So You Don't Have To, which is Bethany Frankel. Yeah, she's like on a reality
she's
show.
Great.
She has her and she has a like $1 billion company for skinny drinks or something. But it was really good. And it basically said date like a guy, just be in the moment, have fun, and have different. Like she talks about having different guys on the burner, like simmer guy, and then a boiling guy, and someone kind of like a go-to
have your
person.
rotation.
But then, Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely,
Yeah,
works.
you have your rotation. That way you're not dependent, stuck on just one guy, right? You have your rotation.
Yeah. And thinking about them.
And you get to see who steps up, right? And if somebody's not stepping up, okay, that's fine. You're on the back burner. This one's stepping up. So we're going on a date with him. You didn't step up. You didn't make the date. I'm not going to call you and ask for the date. If you didn't make it, okay. So
Yeah.
this one did.
I was going to say,
No,
I've
go
learned
ahead.
recently to, let them text first, like you were saying, basically. Don't try to dictate the timing, which my dad always lectures me about. And just, if they're interested, they'll text. Once you text, wait for their text. If they don't, they don't. So, yeah, or a communication of some kind.
Yeah.
But it definitely helps when they're obviously interested.
It does. And that's what you do is you give them the opportunity to show their interest. If you're constantly the one texting first and reaching out, I love the date and when's our next one? Then they don't have any opportunity to let you know that they're interested. And that kills their desire and their passion, right? They're like, oh, she's too into me. There must be something wrong, right? Whereas if they have to fight for you, guys kind of like the quote unquote bitch, which I don't think is a bitch. It's just the woman who's very self-assured and knows her worth and knows her value and says, if you're interested in seeing me, you're going to make the effort. And if you're not interested in seeing me, I got lots of other things to do, whether it's the man that steps up and says, let's go on a date, or it's a girlfriend, or it's taking an acting class, or it's reading my favorite book or getting my nails done. I got stuff to do. So if you step up, fantastic. Let's do this thing. And if you don't, I'm quite happy to do something else. So it's all good. And they know that. Like they can feel that energy. So David, my boyfriend, he was like, I am not letting anybody else in here. We are having dates. And as soon as when we were on a date, be like, okay, so when's our next date? And how's this happening? Let's go. I had to be like, whoa, let's slow down a little. But, he just kept stepping up. And he wanted to be there. He wanted to be the guy. So
how did you meet him?
Online. Okay, Cupid. Yes.
Oh.
Uh-huh. Yeah, there are good men out there on the dating apps. There definitely are. So,
yeah.
Funny story. I had rules on my dating apps, right? Because there are so many guys. So one of my rules was if they haven't filled out their profile, I'm not wasting time on them. If they can't take this seriously and have a decent profile, forget it. That was one of my rules. My other rule was if they message me with like a 3-paragraph essay all about themselves, I'm not even going to bother to read the essay. Put it in your profile, dude, so I can scroll through. Like, I don't want to hear your life story. Because typically a lot of guys would do that and not ask you anything. And then you worry about them. Like, how do you have the time for this, right? Well, David broke both those rules, right? He had just started his profile, so he had nothing but a couple pictures up. And because of that, he basically wrote his profile in the message. So I literally looked at his picture. I was like, yeah, he's cute, but there's nothing here. I'm not even bothering. And I saw the long message. I was like, oh, groan. And then he had big, long paragraph, short paragraph, big, long paragraph. So I glanced at the short paragraph and it said, sitting here at South Coast Plaza, just saw a woman put a plunger in her Louis Vuitton bag. This stuff cracks me up. And he said it even funnier than that, right? So I started cracking up. I'm like, oh, okay, wait. This is a guy that like is observant and sees funny things and will share funny things. And I like a guy that can make me laugh. So then I read the rest of his long paragraphs and they were actually endearing and showed that he had read my profile and was talking about, how many things we had in common and how much he wanted to get to know me. So I was like, okay, I'll give this guy a chance. And I told him, I said, okay, I'm not big into messaging because I'm not doing these paragraphs, but if you want to call me, here's my number. And I had like a Google Voice number, right? So we didn't have my real number. And that was it. Like from then on, he was bound and determined that we were going on a date and then we were going on another date. And he stepped up, but he broke my rules.
Yeah. Well, and would you say that you shouldn't have rules, or at least be a little more flexible like you were, or are they kind of squirmed around the rule? Like your relationship coach, would they have said to have like rules or not, or?
Yeah. So I think anytime we have rules, they're very inflexible, right? We're putting people in boxes, and rules protect us. They're what Brene Brown calls your prickly armor, right? That you put on to protect yourself from people. And I created that rule because there'd been a few scammers that had done that kind of thing. And so I created a rule around the kind of men that do this, right? Which obviously is a big generalization. So yes, I think it's good to notice patterns. It's good to be careful of things. It's good to say, these are the kind of things that tend to not work for me, and be aware of those. But you're right. Rules are not helpful. Knowing what your needs are and what feels good to you is really important. It feels good to me when a man calls. It feels good to me when a man sets up dates. It feels good to me when he pays attention, that I don't really like pasta because I'm gluten-free. So going to an Italian restaurant's not my favorite thing. It feels good to me when he notices these kinds of things. Then those are the kind of people I want to date. So noticing more what feels good rather than strict rules. Yeah, I think that's a good way to go about dating.
Yeah, because I know, like, I talk to a lot of guys too, and it seems one of their complaints is that women are so picky and have their list and rules, and like, it's fine to have a couple deal breakers, but to have a big long list of what you're looking for. And then we talked, Chris and I learned that 80% of guys get no matches online, so the 20% get a lot, so they're always inundated, and then the 80% are pretty clueless when they finally get a match. They're like, don't even know how to act or what to say. So I've definitely, every time I mention that, we talk about giving men more of a break, when they're not so great at online dating.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Give them a break.
Well, and you mentioned communication, Tiphany, and that's been kind of a consistent theme in a couple of our podcasts. One of which was, I don't know, with Alan, who we talked about, the strong male personalities. And that is one of my biggest things, like you said. I mean, I don't want to be in the endless texting game, because you really can't get context in a text.
Yeah.
There we go. There's that another double entendre there. But it's very difficult to get men to transition from a texting relationship to offline dating, like calling you or, making that first date. And that's been the biggest issue that I've had. Or all of a sudden, then 3 months down the road, like you had been texting, et cetera. And then all of a sudden, 3 months down the road, they're like, hey, you want to hang out sometime? And you're like,
wait, what?
Wait a minute. Did you just get bored or something? I mean, what just happened? So there's a lot to say about communication. I recently met someone who lives in another town, so it's not really going to happen. But there was a lot of communication when we were together, which was refreshing, and they were confident in what they were saying. So, and I think that's another big issue for men, is they're scared to say some of the things that they want to say, because they think it might upset us.
Yeah.
But like you said, if we're strong, independent women and we're confident in ourselves, then whatever they say shouldn't really upset us. It's like, okay, that's your opinion. That's your experience. That's great. Here's mine. Where do we meet in the middle? If that's really the question. So, good to know. Making that transition from online dating to offline dating is something that maybe I'm trying to figure out.
Chris, I think something that worked for me. Oh, sorry. Something that worked for me really well was when we had done a back and forth texting 2 or 3 times, not many times. I would say, I'm not really that big into texting. If you'd like to continue this conversation, give me a call. Here's my number. And that was it. And if he continued to text after, I wouldn't respond because he wasn't listening to my boundaries and he didn't care about what I wanted. I might one more time say, you have some really interesting questions. If you'd like to learn more about me, give me a call. And then that would be it, right? And then on the call, you get to learn a lot more about a person from a call. And you can either then say, okay, this could be a person I want to go on a date with, or this just isn't going to jive. Like one man called me and the text seemed fine. Like we were getting along. He was funny. We got on the call and he was high as a kite and started talking about, I was going on a vacation, started talking about how he wanted to come on vacation with me and my kids. And he was so high. And I let him know, I said, I'm not comfortable with this conversation. It's time to go. I have no problem with people enjoying themselves. It's legal in California. But when you're having that first date conversation, because a phone call is kind of almost a first date, right? Like you're meeting each other. It kind of makes, it would be nice for you to be present and hear and not saying inappropriate things. So that was a really good opportunity for me to learn, okay, this isn't somebody I want to spend the time going on a date with. As a mom, you've got to use your time wisely. But then there were people like David, who the conversation was quite lovely, and he kept wanting to call. And so after the fourth phone call, we had a date on Saturday. And this was a Monday, and he'd already called 4 times. And I said, I'm really enjoying the phone calls, but this is a lot of time being spent with somebody I haven't met yet. If you'd like to meet, I have tomorrow night available. Otherwise, I'll see you on Saturday. And that boy got his act together and said, okay, I found a restaurant near you. It's this one. Do you want to meet tomorrow night? I was like, okay, this is great. So I think it's just setting your boundaries and letting them know, that I'm not going to have a texting conversation. I'm not going to have a phone conversation. If you want to see me, let's do this. And then it happens.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add is that I say pretty early on too that I prefer to meet sooner than later. And I haven't done the calls as much, and it probably would be helpful to add that step in there like you're doing. But like I started talking to someone yesterday and met him that night. We talked about meeting the next week, and then the more we messaged, he's like, all right, now I'm really intrigued. He's like, are you free? And I had already mentioned that I was free. So, and we had a great time last night. So and he was
great.
more attractive than I usually get matched with on Bumble is my thing. So I was very excited that he was also attractive. Not that the other ones weren't, if anyone listening. But yeah, it's above average compared to a couple other people. All right. All right. Well, we're getting towards the end. So I usually do like a final thoughts thing, because I like to keep it around 30 minutes. So obviously, if we wanted to keep talking, we can. But if you have any final thoughts, Tiphany first, and then what is your kind of message you'd like to leave for people?
My final thoughts are, the world is your oyster. There are amazing men out there. We just have to have that abundant mindset and know that they're out there, right? If you go into the dating scene saying, men suck, I've been hurt before, all men suck, all men are awful, screw the patriarchy. And I'm a strong feminist, so sometimes I do go down that screw the patriarchy, but I got to dial it back. But if we have that, men suck, men are out to hurt women, we have that attitude, well, that's who we're going to find. We're going to find the men that match what we think they are, versus, okay, I'm open. All right, universe, I am ready for a loving, generous, kind man that's abundant in spirit and generosity. He's abundant with his finances, with his time, with his energy. Universe, I'm out there. I know there are good men that will be good role models for my children. And you let the universe know this is what I'm looking for and this is what I'm ready for, then they will come. And you will find somebody that you jive with. They are out there, and they might be just as scared as you are. So giving them the time and the space and the presence, and just be on the journey and get to know people. I think that made all the difference for me. Take that sense of urgency out of it and just be on the journey.
I just have to say on that comment, yes, sense of urgency is a thing I'm just learning. Like, I know I'm a great catch. I don't have to rush anything. There's no reason to, hasten anything, like take it one step at a time. So that's definitely something I've embraced. And although then I went on a date after one day, but still now I'm trying to not text right away. Yeah, but we are texting back and forth. So anyway, awesome sense of urgency. I get that. All right, Krista, any final thoughts for you?
I would maybe reiterate some of the things that Tiphany has said. I have manifested things that I have said out loud recently. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to start saying some things out loud. And, that saying there are kind, generous men out there just waiting to meet me. So I think that is a very important message, I think, for all of us. It is easy to get trapped into the negative, spiral of, what am I doing wrong? And why am I attracting all of these, men that just try and take advantage of me, or, whatever it is. I think it is, like you said, you like attracts like, so it's, putting your best self out there and manifesting what it is that you want is important. So I think that's my final words.
Yeah.
Good
and on that
words.
topic, I would say the effect you expect is the effect you get. And that is from a book, which I'm forgetting the name of it, but it was like an awesome book. That was like the one thing I took away. So literally I was taking class with a group of people, and it was all technical and online. And the people that worried about technical issues had them. And the people that didn't worry, like me, had no issues. And, it was like the same system and everything, but the people that were sure. So yeah, I definitely agree with that incentive, or that sentiment, like you just said, Krista. Well, all right. I just want to thank both of you very much for being on. This is an awesome episode. Yet again, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I think the message is like very needed, especially for post-divorce. And if I can pull up my little script, I'm going to say my last parts. All right. And let me pull this up. All right. On behalf of Tiphany, Carissa, and myself, thank you for listening to Straight from the Source's Mouth, where we have frank talk about sex and dating in the modern world. And this was episode number 11. And y'all heard Tiphany sharing some great info, and her podcast is Life and Love After Divorce. Is that correct? I want to make sure I said it right. Yep. And then if you want to share
divorce,
Love and Life After Divorce. Sorry. Thank you. And if you want to share any of your socials, we could do that too, or we can share it in the show notes. So, but if you want to mention any of your socials.
I'm pretty simple to find. Tiphany Kane on Instagram. It's TIPHANY KANE on Instagram. And I'm pretty easy to find that way. So I'd love to hear from you guys. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. And I will put that in the description as well. But thanks again. It was an awesome episode. I say that every time, but I love helping people and providing resources. And I think this was a great discussion that will help a lot of people. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Frank Talk, sex and dating educates.